Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
When I find a little girl like this, I've found this voice at some point in my life. Or, oh, I just like being cutesy, so I'm just going to be cutesy. And, and those are all elements that, like, I'll just bring out in my day-to-day life.
Welcome to the Comedians and Elevators podcast. This is my guest, Jennifer Kellams. Jennifer,
Hey.
Say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. I am a voiceover actor coming from the Palm Springs area, and I am dubbed the voiceover fairy godmother, predominantly because I do a lot of like kids e-learning, kids audiobooks, things like that. I also do some corporate e-learning things and some commercials as well, but a lot of things that are kid and family friendly is my like primary niche. And so,
Very cool.
And then when I'm not in my padded room, I am a medical speech language pathologist.
So that definitely translates over, right? I'm sure there's a lot of technical skills that you've learned.
Definitely.
For voice acting, right?
It helps when I do medical narration that I know the 16-syllable words. I'm like, I say those words.
Well, maybe that is the way. Yeah, the way you say the words, right?
Yes,
All
exactly.
Right. All right, so you ready to get started, Jennifer?
Let's do this.
Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see that 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comments section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build, and we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. All right, so the whole point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian. So
Gotcha.
I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any jokes. So Jennifer, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
I actually don't. I actually disagree with this. I feel
Awesome.
like there is something intrinsic. It's like a type of intelligence that people can just observe the world or make connections that are just naturally funny. And so when they're talking, they are making people laugh, and they can do that. I don't think that that is something learned. Whereas I feel like a comic, based off of your definitions, my nephew could learn a funny joke and tell the joke, but he's just learning and memorizing jokes as he goes along. So I feel like that one is almost learned. But when it comes to like naturally just like talking and making people laugh or, being physically funny or whatever, that seems to be a little bit more intrinsic.
Yeah, I love that you have another perspective. My perspective is evolving as well. The reason why I started with this distinction is because at comedy clubs, that was put towards me like, hey, which one are you? And it kind of is not always so clear. But another way to look at it is I would also argue that the comic is external, kind of like telling jokes, observational from the outside, and the comedian's internal.
Yeah.
So another way you could say or look at it from the external is if you keep repeating the same joke, keep saying it out loud over and over and over again, you eventually will internalize it. And perhaps after 10,000 hours, that joke will become funny.
Ideally,
So-
or you're going to be so sick of it and be like, and then like the delivery just fails.
Right.
That's what happens a lot in voiceover is like the more you repeat the script over and over and over, you're like, oh my gosh, and it just becomes like unbelievable. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But then you walk away from it and come back to it. Is that one of the secrets?
That can be, yeah.
If you have time to do that.
But it also depends on like, if you've rehearsed it so many times, even if you walk away and come back to it, you know it so well, and you're like, okay, yeah, I don't feel it anymore because it's, it's different. Every time is different. Yeah.
Do you take that as a challenge sometimes, trying to perfect it in a way?
I do. One, because I'm a perfectionist.
Okay.
And, but there's definitely this sweet spot between understanding the script, interpreting the script that you're given, um, feeling it, believing it, and delivering that to then it being then over rehearsed and over baked. And then you're like, okay, I know what's coming. And then, yeah. So, yeah.
I'm going to throw some MBTI at you real quick, just to for verification. When you say perfectionist, is that a tragic flaw?
I think most just like most traits, some it becomes a strength until it becomes a weakness.
Okay.
So, but I do definitely understand the concept of sometimes done is better than done correctly. So
Yeah.
I've definitely reined myself back on this one.
All right. Well, over eventually,
Beady, beady,
we
beady.
all kind of evolve in that way. All right. Ready for the first question?
Let's do this. That wasn't the first question.
That was the concept of the
Oh,
whole podcast, so we can answer the next set of questions from that perspective.
okay.
Okay. So the first question is about the role of persona in comedy. So how much of the comedian's voice is a character versus their real self?
I think there's a um I think every comedian's a little bit different. You have your straight man and you have, the one that's just like more overt. And as somebody that's not the overt type of comedian, or even if I am a comedian, I'm one of those like unintentionally funny sometimes person. Um and that's really like that's just me coming out and being completely oblivious to, oh, what I said was funny, awesome. But then I think that there are other people who take pieces of themselves, especially when they get that positive feedback, and then they highlight that, and they just say like, oh, this, people thought I was funny, I'm gonna bring this part out and highlight this element. And I think like all of our character work as well are pieces of us that we find within our voice. When I find a little girl like this, I've found this voice at some point in my life. Or, oh, I just like being cutesy, so I'm just gonna be cutesy. And and those are all elements that like I'll just bring out in my day-to-day life. So I think there's a little bit of both there, depending on what type of a comedian you kind of present yourself as. Or
Well, I would definitely say when you get surprised that people are laughing, you didn't know you were being funny, that's a comedian, right?
Totally. And that's kind of where I say like I do think it's like this natural intelligence where you're just like, oh, I felt that.
Well, you saw the response, but
Yeah.
it was the surprise that made them laugh, right?
Mm-hmm.
So arguably that's part of the blind spot is the fact that we don't know why we're funny. And then once we learn it, then we can start crafting jokes, and then the comic,
Comes
you have
out.
to start, it comes out, or well, it's always out. I would argue it's actually always external.
Yeah.
And now that you found what that thing is on the outside that people see, you got to bring it back in. And so that's when the work starts. So,
Yeah.
all right. That's my perspective. All right. How about punching up versus punching down? So where do comics versus comedians subscribe to this? And let me put it in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
What? Okay. I think, gosh, I really see comedy as you can punch up, and I feel like that is a higher level of intelligence. Um, you have comedians that they'll say things and it makes you think, and I love those comedians. And then there's also the funny things like the cat videos, and those like ascribe to your lowest common denominator, and they're not any less funny. In fact, some could argue that that's a high level of entertainment as well, because it's the unexpected versus the insults. So I think there are different types of comedy. I prefer the types that make you think or lean towards the unexpected. I'm not a fan of the insult comedy, but some people do.
I mean, you
Does that even
basically
answer
said,
the question?
no, it does. I think it's a whole new perspective. You basically said the cat videos are punching up.
I do think that cat videos are punching up because, I mean, even though you know the cat's going to do something and be an asshole, you don't know where it's coming from.
But you know where it's going to, because a lot of times they literally punch somebody in the
Yeah,
video.
or they could, you know?
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
the punching is the most hilarious. They literally like
Right.
punch
You're like, what?
human.
Right.
Humans are above cats, I believe. So would that be punching
Exactly.
up?
Exactly. Like, I love a good cat
That's quite
video.
hilarious. Hilarious premise. Honestly, I'm just trying to flesh it out. Be like, I'm trying to externalize it, trying to bring it back in for
I know.
further use.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
oh,
very
the
good.
master has become the questioner.
No, definitely. Yeah, you definitely got some good intuition there. I love it. All right. How about cultural translation of comedy? So, how do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
Context. There's a French joke. Oh God, it's some guy's name. It's in like a French textbook where you're learning English. And I was just watching a video on this the other day. And it's like, if you ask a French person, like, oh God, I'm so gonna bomb the joke. But it's like, why does so and so do whatever the thing is? And it's like, you know, what does so and so have on the table or something like that? Like a French person's gonna write angry notes to me, but it is a thing. And if you're like, let's say like the guy's name is James, and you're like, if you're in France and you're like, so hey, what does James have on the table? A French person's gonna be like, oh my gosh, ha 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 ha, and you know you'll get some good street cred if you can deliver the joke right. But if you go to
Does this have
America,
to do with the word table in French?
no, and honestly, I don't even know that it has anything to do with table. I'm just like trying to give like some context to be like, it's in like a French to English textbook where you're learning like something along the lines, but not actually this. Like James puts his cat on the table or something like that. Something stupid. And they love this joke because like everybody had this textbook growing up. So this generation of people. But then if you were to like say that same joke in the United States, they'd be like, I don't care what James has on the table. Like this, I have no context to pull from.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the ultimate example. I think is 6'7". Oh, here we go. That's the
6'7".
worst. Right. But what does it even mean? Nobody
Nothing.
knows.
That's what's funny about it.
Thank God, because
Yes.
intrinsically not so good, but the
Right.
originality is,
Right.
the rhythm of that. So
My
it sounds
funny,
like
my
you're alluding to
favorite part about 6'7" are the people that are like, oh, I know what 6'7" means. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, do you really? And like they make up some like bullshit narrative and you're like, all right, now I know where to mark you. I love people's interaction with this.
No,
social
absolutely. That's why I
concept.
bring it up, especially, very much younger, maybe not child, but 18 and
Mm-hmm.
between 18 and 25, and they say it like, they own it. And it's like, I don't know if you want to own this one, but
And they were so close to 6'9". I mean, come on.
Yeah.
We already have a funny number set.
we do. Yeah, exactly. And then there's a whole bunch of palindromes we can throw in there on top of that. All
Right.
right. So how does the silence when your joke doesn't land hurt? Physically, emotionally, morally, or spiritually?
Oh, that is deep. All right. So, little story. Like, so we had to do in like high school theater. I remember we had to do like stand-up comics. And like I said, I am not a funny person and I'm already dying. And it was not funny. Nobody's laughing except for the polite, like, oh, okay, we're getting through this. I was completely demoralized. So that would be, hold on, spiritually, emotionally. Let's see. I was completely demoralized, but also like mentally, I never wanted to do any sort of like stand-up thing or improv. Because the same thing kind of happened when I did like an improv thing. It was just awful. It was like, I'm gonna tell this improv. And like I started priding myself on like, oh, I've actively avoided all the improv opportunities that have like, we're gonna do improv. And I'm like, yep, I was able to avoid that one. And so I feel like my internal soul was affected. I think it affected me mentally. Personally, I would say yeah, I would say even like personally, because I would just,
Well, you said demoralize, so
yeah,
is that
completely
is that
demoralized.
morally? But is that morally? If is
Not like,
demoralize the moral?
not by like
Isn't that weird? The
the
word
literal
isn't the
term,
same.
isn't it? Like demoralized has nothing to do with morality.
That doesn't seem
Hmm.
right, but it sounds, but it's
I
correct.
I wonder. Okay, so see, now I want to go to the etymology of what like demoralized comes from.
Right.
I'm a nerd. I'm not. I'm not a comic. I'm a nerd.
Well, if you're going to research it, we will start becoming a comic, right, to make that funny.
Exactly.
But yeah, there's
Exactly.
something
I'll tell
there.
a whole story about it.
That's the way to do it. All right. So, love and justice. So, is the highest function of comedy to expose injustice or to make people feel less alone while living with it? It's a brain twister.
It is, because I feel like there are comics and comedians that have used both. You know, during the Great Depression, during World War II, you had people like Buster Keaton that were using comedy to bring people together, and pull people, give people like a break from the atrocities of reality. Um, but you also have people like Jon Stewart today who really, really make you think about the things going on today, whether you agree with them or not. But regardless, like the way he puts things together, it gives you this opportunity to think, but also in a funny way, which, research shows when you like hear current events in a funny way, you're more likely to internalize them and
Yeah.
think about things and remember them. So
Well, I agree. I could say that I think Jon Stewart is exposing injustice, but it's not assuming truth. Like the joke is the method of his exposing of it, and he's
correct.
already slanted the whole premise
Hmm.
is the method that he exposes, like the how he says this is unjust, and you're like, wait a
Yes.
minute, I don't know if I agree with that premise, but that's why it's funny.
Right.
And so that's when you may have been, I think, may have that like, wait a minute, I don't think that's unjust, but it's not so unjust that I find it funny either. So,
Yeah.
but I think that's what he's doing. Am I off
Yeah.
base on
And
that?
I think, he's making these connections that um I mean, I don't want to go down a political rabbit hole, but he'll make connections that like you don't necessarily think about because,
Right.
especially in American society, our attention span to current events is like we just can't because we have, a fire hose of information
Right.
thrown at us, and then like yeah, but if you're thinking about if you want to think about this over here, but we don't want you to think about this over here, we're going to start making you think over here. It's like the ultimate magic trick, but with politics.
Right. Well, and I
and,
don't even think
and
I don't think he's being political either. It's just his
no,
methodology dictates that you assume it's, even though the topic is politics, that it's,
right.
he's
But I think,
actually,
yeah. And I think the way he brings these things together, because we don't think about this thing that happened 3 or 4 years ago. Or we don't know about it because we don't watch C-SPAN, but that's literally his and his crew's job
that's
is to
another.
watch C-SPAN. And it's like, okay, I'm not telling you, or maybe he is, it's just like, but, here are these things, like here's this connection that you just don't really think about.
Right. All right. So,
Yeah.
very important question: advertising and self promotion. Who advertises themselves more, the comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast and get the message out today. See you soon.
The magician, you're adding in another person. And how are we defining the magician?
I mean, pretty self-explanatory.
I mean, as the fairy godmother, I think I'm a magician, so.
Okay.
Um,
I think that works. I think you could play
yeah,
that. Yeah, if you went out on stage during a magic, you're
yeah,
doing magic, but you're
yeah,
dressed as, I think that would work.
yeah. I think, but see, this goes back to our disagreement on, the comic versus the comedian and like who's who and
I don't
what's
think
what.
we actually
But
disagree. I think this is a
no,
John Stewart situation.
yes. Um, in my perception, I think the comic probably advertises and self promotes more because he's learning. Here's my buzzwords. Here's my marketing phrase. Here's how I'm going to get that out. And I feel like, and so that's a more like intentional set of marketing. Um, and I feel like next tier would be the magician because we're still like showing up to show you something and say, hey, look at this. Come on, look at this. And, or not show you something.
Yeah.
And then the comedian, based off of the way I'm seeing it as something intrinsic, is somebody that they're like doing their thing and, somebody's going to be like, oh, that was pretty funny. Oh, let me show this other person. So you're going to get more word of mouth with somebody that's just like naturally funny than somebody. And whereas with somebody that's more intentional, you have to be more intentional with your advertising and marketing.
All right. Okay, so how about censorship and defense? So does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point, like a magician or a fairy godmother?
I think they can. What are you trying to get across? Like who do you want your audience to be? You've got very lowbrow. This goes back to the punching up, punching down. You have the people who are the like the shock jocks, and that's what you're gonna do. And maybe you are naturally funny as the comedian, shocking people, and as a shock jock, but at the same time, you're also like, oh, that joke landed well. I'm going to incorporate that into this interview with so and so. But then you also have people that want to be higher, that want to make people think, and um, they're not. So they're not going to be offensive per se, unless that's, I don't know. Because I'm thinking of like George Carlin, who was like, I want to make you think, and he wasn't so much a shock jock, but he was not afraid of dropping an F-bomb. Or what was that skit where he drops like 20 F-bombs or something?
The 7 or 5 words you can never say.
The words you can never say, yeah. So he's not afraid of it either, but it's in a higher context than I'm just going to shock you.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't have his character wasn't shocking.
Correct.
Like Andrew Dice Clay, his character was shocking.
Yeah.
And
then you also,
what he said.
Yeah, and then you also have like, my mom shows, and they're like these clean cut stand-up comics, and it's very family friendly jokes. And, it's still stand-up. It's still, some crowd work, still talking about observational humor, but they just kind of like keep it clean. So it really depends on the audience.
It does.
And the
Okay, so
goal
then,
and the intent.
no, yeah, absolutely. So then who survives better in the cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
Definitely not the mudslinger. You're out already. Like, and here's the thing interesting about cancel culture. Both sides are the first to like finger point at the other side for canceling. So let's see, who would survive? I think the one that's not angling for something, but is just true to themselves. So I'm going with the magician. I'm going with the magician on this one. You do not agree.
No, I do think the magician. Actually, I would think the mudslinger would survive best in the cancel culture because they're the one canceling. So they're the ones that basically created the whole situation in the first place.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. But then at the same time, like, you're going to have somebody else in cancel culture that's like, what? You want to cancel that? But look at all the things you're doing. I guess then they also become the mudslinger. But then
Well,
everybody,
yeah.
oh,
I mean,
man, that's a hard one.
I don't know if it's hard. The magician then will get rid of the mudslinger. The comedian will turn the mudslinger into a heckler and cancel him, and then the
Yeah.
comic will just use him as material. So
So you know what? This is like a 4-level rock, paper, scissors
it
game.
is. It is. So
Yes, you just invented a new game and we just need hand gestures to play it.
absolutely. Okay. So Jennifer, are you ready to enter the multiverse?
Oh, good God. Yes.
All
Put me
right.
in. Put me
Okay.
in.
All right, you got it now. Here, you got to choose your avatar. So, board game Zoomcast, play versus performance. If comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
I have nothing but respect for the Foley artist, but personally, I would probably be the one adding color. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does comedy work better when it's painted vividly or when it's orchestrated sonically?
Um, I want to say sonically, I'm a more auditory person, voiceover artist. I think you have the theater of the mind. It paints that world, and you know, you can create a vivid video, but you're never going to replicate how vivid or sonic that audio immersion that just gets you in your own brain. Your brain can create something like a visual artist. I don't think they can match it.
Now, the board game is in the multiverse, so it doesn't have to be visually physical. So, is that one of the reasons why you chose the colorist?
I think I'm the colorist because I'm just not talented enough to be
To
to
be a Foley artist, but you
to
do
be a Foley
voiceover work?
artist. I
Isn't that?
do because I do the voiceover work and I can do a little bit of the audio production immersion, but like I
Oh, I
have
see.
some amazing friends that are just incredible at it, and I'm like,
You know less
no,
colorist, that's
I'm
why.
just gonna I'm gonna hide in the corner and
Yeah,
I'll paint some highlights for you.
got it. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. So here on the Comedians in Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest. And the previous guest was Tabitha Rickard. And
Oh,
her question,
I love Tabitha. Hi, Tabs.
surprise, exactly in sequence. And her question for you, Jennifer, is what did you do last summer? Confess.
I'm a boring person.
Oh,
Let's see. Well, I'm in Palm Springs, so summer doesn't end here. Um, Last summer, I rebuilt my booth twice.
okay. Wow.
Yeah. I started with a teeny tiny booth and then I was like, I need a bigger booth. And
Don't you have to change spaces to do that?
I have the same space. I just ripped
Oh,
the other one out. And my booth is actually in my bedroom, so I just like shoved my bed over and told my husband like, "Sorry, you don't get as much space on your side of the bed." And he's like crazy good and supportive. And he's like, "Yeah, that's fine." And then I didn't like that booth as much because I have like some air conditioner stuff going on.
mm,
So I ripped that one out and like just built some a solid wood booth, like with some air gaps. Did some research.
huh.
Um,
So you figured something out. It sounds
I
great.
did.
So
I
your
did.
audio is your audio is on point. So I guess you could make a YouTube video on how to because it sounds like it's working out.
Yes. Yes, I love this. I love this booth. It's
Awesome.
yes.
All right, last question. Legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comics Tight Five survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
Okay. The comedian's point of view to be more timeless. Okay, sorry, repeat the thing. My brain just exploded with that question.
Yes. Yeah. Who gets remembered? So will the comics Tight Five, which like is on stand
Yeah.
up,
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
5 minutes. Okay.
Gotcha.
Will that survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
If the comedian's point of view can create change, inspire, I think that it can be timeless. However, you also have the comics like George Carlin, like, we're talking about George Carlin's the things you can't say, and
Hmm.
that becomes timeless. So, and
Well,
I
which one
think,
is Carlin? Is he a comic or a comedian?
well, I mean, they're all both to like some extent, but
At
like,
that level, I
but
would
like
agree.
his skit, the things you can't say, is absolutely like, I mean, he's a funny person telling funny jokes, but I think in that context, he was telling funny jokes. They were planned, they were prepared. It wasn't off the cuff. So if you have a stand-up comic telling planned, prepared jokes, it's really going to depend on how that's received, how other people are talking about it. That it's that classic word of mouth versus that comedian that could last with them just naturally being funny if what they're being funny about is actually inspiring or inciting change or something in the culture.
So they both can get remembered.
They could. I know
Awesome.
this whole interview, you're like, which one? And I'm like, both.
No, it's not supposed to. If you've seen any episodes where there are answers, they're very short episodes. So,
Oh, cool. This will
well,
be the longest episode ever.
so Jennifer, where can everybody find you online?
So you can find me online at vofairygodmother.com. I'm also on Instagram at vo_fairygodmother.com. LinkedIn, Jennifer Kellams, Kellams. And you can also find me through articulate.studios, and that's articulate as in the number, where we just finished season 1 of Static Shift, which is this amazing, highly, fully sensory experience. So listen with earbuds, because I've listened both ways, and it's incredible with earbuds. And it's this neo-noir thriller audio drama. And the whole season's out. If you are a fan of Stranger Things or shows like that, you're gonna love this show. And I'm so proud to be a part of it, and I'm proud of my group for the creation of this.
Awesome, Jennifer. Well, thank you so much for being my guest,
My
and for
pleasure.
everyone. Absolutely, everyone, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye, everybody.
If you're interested in too much information like in the network state or Mantipus the chicken shit, check out this video. Or is it this one right here? Well, either way. Lizard.